She was 2 hours away from saying, "I do," when she discovered her groom had another woman, another child, and another life. But that's not even the craziest part, because the man she texted for help was the one who had vanished from her life 7 years ago without a word. And on the day of her wedding, he came back. Not to apologize, to stop the marriage before it destroyed her.
Heels. 2 hours before Charlotte Bennett was supposed to walk down the aisle, she locked the bridal suite door, pressed her palm flat against the polished wood, as if she needed to feel something solid, heels, and stared at herself in the mirror like she was looking at a stranger who had borrowed her face for the day. The dress was perfect, the hair was perfect, the makeup was flawless. The ivory silk fell the way expensive silk was supposed to fall, heels, smooth and obedient, skimming every line of her body, as if the fabric itself had been taught how to flatter her. Her makeup artist had given her exactly what she had asked for 3 months ago: soft light around the eyes, a clean lip color, heels, nothing too dramatic, the kind of bridal look that was meant to age well in photographs. Her hair was pinned high enough to look elegant, loose enough to suggest softness. Everything had been chosen with care. Everything had been approved, arranged, heels, paid for, confirmed, and checked twice. Everything looked right, heels. That was the problem, because nothing felt right. Her chest was tight, her hands were cold, her mouth felt dry, though she had forced down water and half a cup of coffee and one bite of a croissant she never should have tried to eat, heels. And beneath all the satin, the perfume, the flowers, the expensive illusion of a beautiful wedding, one thought kept rising like something that refused to drown. Don't do this. Charlotte had always trusted her instincts. Not loudly, not dramatically, heels, just quietly, accurately. Her mother used to say she could spot dishonesty from across a room. Her father used to joke that she would have made a terrifying lawyer because no one would ever get a lie past her. She noticed details other people missed, heels. She heard the gap between what people said and what they meant. She had inherited her mother's eyes and her father's caution, and for most of her life those two things together had served her well. And yet here she was, heels, dressed to marry a man she no longer trusted, a man she no longer even recognized. Or maybe the truth was worse than that. Maybe she had never recognized him at all. Maybe she had only recognized what she needed to see. Safety, stability, predictability, heels. A polished future after a messy past. That kind of thing does not happen all at once. It happens slowly. Hesitation in his voice. A canceled lunch. A message that feels too clean. A smile that no longer reaches the eyes. Heels. A story that fits so neatly it starts sounding rehearsed. And then one day, what you have been trying not to know steps into the light and refuses to leave. 3 weeks earlier, heels. Charlotte had been walking back to her car after Nathan Calloway canceled lunch for what he claimed was a client emergency. He had texted 20 minutes before they were meant to meet, apologized, added a line about making it up to her, heels, and ended with a heart that looked more irritating than affectionate once she read it back later. Heels. At the time she had almost believed him. Almost. Nathan was a senior attorney at one of Chicago's most respected firms. Client emergencies did happen. Schedules changed. Deals ran late. Heels. She had been telling herself for months that successful men had chaotic calendars and that mature women adapted instead of taking it personally. Heels. She had almost gotten all the way back to her car, still making excuses for him when she saw him half a block away outside a coffee shop. He was with a woman. Dark hair, easy smile, familiar posture, heels. The kind of relaxed familiarity you only have with someone your body already knows. And in the woman's arms was a little boy. Nathan leaned down and kissed the child's forehead. Not awkwardly, not politely, naturally. Heels. Like he had done it 100 times before. Charlotte froze on the sidewalk. The city kept moving. Cars passed. People crossed the intersection. Heels. Somewhere nearby, a horn blared in that irritated, constant way Chicago horns do when somebody is taking too long to commit to a lane. A bus exhaled at the curb. The world did not stop to honor the fact that hers had just tilted, but for a few seconds, heels, everything narrowed into one unbearable image. Nathan, the man she was about to marry, touching another woman like she mattered, touching a child like he belonged to him. Charlotte did not confront him, heels. She did what many smart women do when the truth arrives in public, and they are not yet ready to hear their own voice say it out loud. She went silent. She turned around. She got in her car, heels. She drove home with her fingers locked around the wheel so tightly they hurt. At 2 red lights, she had to remind herself to breathe. At one stop sign, she almost missed the turn into her own street. Feels. By the time she made it into her apartment, she was shaking hard enough that she set her purse on the kitchen counter and stood there staring at it, like she had forgotten what people normally did after betrayal. Feels. That night, Nathan arrived with flowers and takeout and apologies. He smiled the same careful smile people at his firm probably trusted with $10 million closings. He kissed her cheek. He set the bags on the counter. Feels. He moved around her kitchen like he belonged there, opening drawers, getting plates, asking if she wanted the dumplings or the noodle dish first. He acted like a man who had nothing to hide. That part was almost worse than the cheating. The confidence. Feels. The performance. The assumption that he could stand in her kitchen and lie beautifully enough to smooth over what she had seen with her own eyes. When she asked where he had really been, he lied without blinking. Not clumsily, not nervously, feels professionally. It was not the lie itself that chilled her first. Feels. It was how practiced he sounded while delivering it. He did not scramble. He did not over-explain. He did not become defensive. He simply placed one clean sentence in front of another and expected them to hold. Feels. And in that moment, Charlotte felt something old and painful stir inside her. Not because of Nathan, because she knew that tone, knew that kind of emotional distance. Feels. Knew what it felt like to stand in front of a man you once trusted and suddenly realize he was letting you drown in half-truths. That memory had a name, Ethan Hayes. She had not allowed herself to think his name often in years. Not honestly, Feels. She had built a whole life around not thinking it honestly. But grief has its own filing system, and once one drawer opens, the others slide loose. Charlotte did not sleep that night. Feels. Nathan eventually fell asleep beside her after kissing her shoulder and telling her she worried too much. Feels. And Charlotte lay there with her eyes open in the dark, listening to him breathe, and wondering how many nights she had already slept next to a stranger without admitting it. The next morning, she called in sick. Feels. Waited until she knew Nathan had gone to work, opened his tablet, and found the second life he had built behind her back. There were emails, photos, bank transfers, school forms, mortgage payments, a dentist appointment for the little boy. Feels. A pediatric checkup, grocery delivery receipts, weekend plans, strings of domestic messages so ordinary they became grotesque. The woman's name was Jennifer, the child was Michael. Nathan had not been having a careless affair. Feels. He had been living two complete realities, maintaining each one with the cold precision of a man who considered emotional deception an administrative skill. Jennifer knew about Charlotte. Feels. Worse, she knew exactly what Charlotte was. Not the love of Nathan's life, not the woman he chose. Respectable bride, a polished public wife, the one who looked right in photos, the one who would help him secure the promotion he wanted. Feels. Charlotte sat on her living room floor with the tablet in her hands, the hardwood cold through the thin fabric of her lounge pants, and realized something important. Her heart was not broken. Not really. Not in the way it had once broken for Ethan. Feels. What she felt now was something colder. Humiliation, rage, disgust. Not only at Nathan, at herself. At the version of herself that had wanted safety so badly she had mistaken a polished man for a trustworthy one. Feels. At the version of herself that had kept telling her instincts to be quiet because adulthood, she had decided, meant making peace with compromise. When Nathan came over later that day, Charlotte did not give him space to explain. Feels. She did not ask questions to which she already knew the answers. Feels. She told him to leave. She told him the wedding was off. She told him they were done. That should have been the end. That is how stories about betrayal are supposed to work in the version of life people like to believe they are living. You discover the lie. Feels. You call it by its name. You throw the man out. He leaves. There is pain, yes, but there is also clarity. Instead, Nathan sat down on her couch like the room belonged to him and spoke to her in the same calm voice he used in court. Feels. That voice changed everything. Because men like Nathan are never most dangerous when they yell. They are most dangerous when they stay calm. Rage can look frightening. Controlled entitlement is far more destructive. Feels. He told her the wedding would go forward, not because he loved her, because he needed it. His firm was preparing to elevate him. His public image mattered. He needed the right wife, the right family, the right photographs. Feels. He needed a woman who looked stable, educated, tasteful, socially acceptable, the kind of woman clients liked seeing on the arm of a man they were about to trust with complex money. He told her 6 months after the wedding they could divorce quietly. Feels. He would be generous. He said it like he was negotiating a business contract with a difficult but manageable counterparty. Then he moved to the real threat. Her father's construction business, permits, inspections, city relationships, deals. Her mother's community work, funding approvals, board connections, friends of friends. He named pressure points with terrifying precision, not shouting, not threatening in any dramatic way, deals. Simply laying out the network like a man showing her a map he had already memorized. Charlotte understood then that Nathan was not just a liar. He was a strategist. He had studied her life. He knew where to push. He knew what to threaten, deals. And he knew exactly how to make her feel trapped without ever needing to raise his voice. By the time he left, she was shaking. Not because she still loved him, because she understood what kind of man he really was, deals, and because she understood something worse. Men like that do not lose gracefully. They punish. They lash out where it costs them least and hurts others most. They do not need to win love. They only need to preserve control, deals. She looked at her phone for a long time after he walked out. She did not call the police, not because she trusted Nathan more than the law, because she knew how power works when it wears a respectable face, deals. Because she knew how little visible evidence coercion often leaves behind. Because fear does strange things to intelligent women. It does not always make them weak. Sometimes it makes them practical. Sometimes it makes them quiet, deals. Sometimes it sends them reaching for the one person they swore they would never need again, deals. Charlotte opened her contacts, scrolled down, stopped at a number she had never deleted. Ethan Hayes, the ghost, the wound, the promise she had spent 7 years trying to bury, deals. Ethan had entered her life when he was 16 and looked like a boy who expected kindness to be temporary. Her father had brought him home from a construction site. He had nowhere safe to go. Charlotte's parents took him in. At first, he barely spoke, deals. He moved through the house like someone trying to avoid taking up space. He thanked people too often. He apologized for things that required no apology. He kept his shoes lined up so neatly beside the guest room wall it hurt to look at them. But slowly, deals. Carefully, he became part of everything. Her mother fed him. Her father taught him. Charlotte watched him begin to trust the world in small, fragile pieces, the way some people nurse injured birds, deals, hoping they do not realize too quickly that they still know how to fly away, deals. Then she watched herself fall in love with him, the kind of love that begins quietly and then suddenly rearranges your entire interior life. They had 2 years, deals, 2 years of secret glances and rooftop promises, and the dangerous sweetness of believing that the person who saw your soul also intended to stay. 2 years of learning how to be brave in the presence of someone equally frightened, deals. 2 years of coffee and paper cups and late-night drives and hands brushing under the dinner table while her parents pretended not to notice. Then one day Ethan vanished. No goodbye, no explanation, no note, just absence, deals. Charlotte had survived that by turning herself into someone more careful, someone less romantic, someone who chose order over intensity, predictability over risk, polished men over wounded ones, deals. Futures that looked stable on paper over feelings that made her believe in impossible things. That was how Nathan had happened, deals. And now, because life has a cruel sense of symmetry, the only number her hand could reach in that moment belonged to the first man who had ever taught her how badly trust could hurt. She typed, deleted, typed again, deals. Then sent it before she could stop herself. If you still want me, come get me. I'm getting married in 3 weeks, and I need help. The reply came less than a minute later. Send me the venue. Send me the time. She did. Then another message arrived. Deals. I'll be there. Don't marry him. Charlotte stared at the screen so long the words blurred. That should have comforted her. Instead, it made her chest ache. Because promises are dangerous when they come from someone who once disappeared. Deals. Because part of her still remembered what it felt like to be 20 and stupid and certain that some promises meant more, because they were made under stars no one else had seen. Because part of her still hated herself for wanting to believe him. Deals. The next 3 weeks passed like a dream somebody else was forcing her to act in. She approved flowers. She sat through tastings. Deals. She nodded through meetings about table linens and transportation timing and music cues and whether the champagne toast should happen before or after the first course. Deals. She smiled for people who loved her and had no idea she was being marched toward a ceremony. She no longer had the power to stop cleanly. Nathan was charming in public, icy in private. He became more watchful, more controlled, Deals, more convinced she would obey. He asked fewer questions and observed more. Sometimes she would catch him looking at her the way trial lawyers look at witnesses, while deciding whether they are about to crack deals. One night she woke up and found him standing at the edge of her bed holding her phone. He asked who Ethan was. Charlotte lied and said old college boyfriend. Nathan watched her face for so long she thought he would see everything. Deals. Then he handed the phone back and left without another word. From that moment on, she knew there would be no safe way through this, only a painful one. Worse, Ethan went silent. No calls, no follow-up, no reassurance, nothing. Deals. Charlotte began to wonder if she had made a catastrophic mistake. Maybe he had changed his mind. Maybe he had only answered out of shock. Maybe he would disappear again. Maybe she had been stupid enough to trust a ghost twice. Deals. By the morning of the wedding, she felt hollowed out. Her mother arrived early with pastries and concern written all over her face. Rebecca Bennett took one look at her daughter and knew something was wrong. Deals. That was one of the cruelest parts of the whole week. Charlotte could feel how close she was to safety if she would only tell the truth to the right person. If you don't want to do this, Rebecca said quietly, we can stop right now. Deals. Charlotte almost told her everything, almost. Deals. Nathan's threats rushed back into her mind with brutal clarity. Her father, her mother, their names in Nathan's mouth, the cold elegance of his blackmail. So she lied again. Said she was just nervous. Said she was fine. Every bride gets nervous. Deals. Her mother did not believe her. But love does not always get to outrun fear. Sometimes fear arrives wearing practical consequences and tells you silence is sacrifice. By late morning, Charlotte was dressed, staled, pinned into place. Deals. Ready to be presented. Guests began arriving in the garden. From the bridal suite window, she could see Nathan moving through them with perfect confidence. A man who believed he had already won. That was when her phone vibrated. Deals. Charlotte grabbed it so fast she nearly dropped it. I'm already here. She moved to the window again. There were flowers, rows of white chairs, men in dark suits, women in expensive dresses, family friends talking softly. Deals. Colleagues from Nathan's firm checking watches and glasses. And near the side path, half shadowed by the hedges, stood Ethan. No spectacle, no impossible entrance, no movie theatrics. Just a man standing still, watching, waiting. He looked older. Deals. Broader, harder. The softness she remembered had not vanished, but life had built something stronger around it, the way fire tempers metal without entirely changing what the metal is. He looked like a man who had learned exactly what danger costs. Deals. And exactly how to stand his ground anyway. Charlotte's heart began to race so hard it hurt, because the truth was suddenly real. He had come, not in fantasy, in flesh, and whatever happened next, her life would split down the middle right there. Deals. Before him. After him. The walk down the aisle felt unreal. Charlotte held her father's arm and focused on breathing, because if she focused on anything else, she thought she might stop moving entirely. Deals. Nathan waited at the front in a perfect suit with a perfect smile. The guests turned toward her. The music played. Everything looked like a beautiful wedding. That was the final cruelty of it. How lovely coercion can look from a distance. Deals. How easy it is for an arrangement built on pressure and fear to resemble romance if the flowers are expensive enough and the weather cooperates. When Charlotte reached the front, Nathan took her hand. His grip tightened. His smile never changed. Deals. Don't do anything stupid, he whispered. Her father heard enough in her silence to lean close and murmur. We can still turn around. That almost undid her. Because sometimes the thing that saves you is not a dramatic rescue. Deals. It is one quiet chance to tell the truth. The efficient began. Charlotte barely heard a word. Her pulse was too loud. Nathan stood beside her like a man managing a transaction. Deals. And off to one side, beyond the flowers and polite faces and curated perfection, Ethan remained where he was, not interrupting, not claiming, just there. When the efficient paused, Charlotte looked at the crowd, at her mother, at her father, at Nathan. Deals. At the life she was about to enter if she stayed silent 1 second longer. Then she pulled her hand out of Nathan's. The movement was small, but it detonated the room. Nathan's eyes changed first. Then the first murmur moved through the chairs. Deals. Charlotte heard herself speak before she fully felt the words. I can't do this. Nathan tried to smile through it. Nerves, he told the guests. Just nerves. He reached for her again. That was when Ethan started walking toward them. Slowly, deliberately. Deals. Not like a hero storming in to claim a woman. Like a man who had made one decision and intended to stand in its truth. Nathan saw him and something close to fear flickered across his face. That was the first thing Charlotte noticed. Not anger, feels. Not confusion, recognition. He stopped a few feet away. He looked only at Charlotte, not at the guests, not at Nathan, only at her. Do you want to marry him? The question hung in the air. Simple, clean, no poetry, no demand, just truth, feels. Charlotte looked at Nathan, looked at the altar, looked at the life everyone expected her to step into. Then she said the one word that finally belonged to her again. No. That word changed everything. Nathan hissed something under his breath, feels. Her father moved instantly, stepping closer before Charlotte even asked. Her mother stood from the front row with tears already in her eyes. The officiant looked like she wished she had chosen a different profession, feels. The guests did what guests always do when someone finally tells the truth in public. They stared. Ethan did not reach for Charlotte immediately. He let the answer stand first, feels. Then Nathan, still trying to salvage what could not be salvaged, leaned in and muttered that she was making a catastrophic mistake. Ethan looked at him then. For the first time, feels. Whatever passed across Nathan's face in that moment told Charlotte something critical. Nathan knew Ethan was not bluffing. You will not contact her again, Ethan said quietly. You will not threaten her family again. And if you do, feels, the evidence waiting for investigators will be the least of your problems. Nathan went still. Charlotte heard the phrase evidence waiting for investigators and understood suddenly that Ethan had not come on emotion alone. He had come prepared, feels. The truth had already started moving before he stepped into the garden. That mattered, because real rescue is not just passion, it is planning. Charlotte took off her veil, not dramatically, not angrily, feels, just with the calm of someone removing a costume that no longer fit. Then she stepped down from the altar. Ethan moved beside her, feels, not leading, not owning the moment, just staying with her. Her mother came forward. Her father stayed close. No one stopped them. The ceremony ended right there, not with a scandal, but with a woman deciding that a beautiful lie was still a lie, feels. Ethan drove them away in a black SUV. No chase, no spectacle, only silence and city traffic and Charlotte's own breathing on uneven waves. That was the first thing she noticed, how ordinary the escape felt. No music, no glamour, feels. No cinematic triumph. Just a seatbelt across her chest, her ruined wedding pinned in memory behind her, and the unbearable understanding that survival often looks embarrassingly normal while it is happening, feels. They went to a secure apartment Ethan kept for clients. Her parents came too. Only after the doors were locked and the first stunned hour passed did Charlotte ask the question that had lived in her body for 7 years. Why did you leave? Feels. Ethan did not answer quickly. That was new. Feels. The boy she had once loved used silence like a shield. The man in front of her used it like something heavier, something he would have to lift before he could set it down. Then he told her about his mother's debts, feels, about dangerous people who found him after he started building a real life with the Bennetts. Photos, names, schedules. He said they had made it clear Charlotte and her family could be used against him. He said that at 23, feels, terrified and half feral from the life he had barely escaped, he believed disappearing was the only way to keep them safe. So he left. Not because he stopped loving her, feels, because he loved her and did not know how to protect her without breaking both of them. Charlotte listened without moving. Part of her wanted to throw something. Part of her wanted to cry. Part of her hated that she understood, feels. That was the cruelty of adulthood. Sometimes the truth does not erase the wound. It only explains why it happened. Ethan kept talking, feels. He admitted what came next had not been clean. He had spent months doing work for men he should never have been near. Courier work, shadow logistics, low-level criminal networks. Then he got out, built a security and risk consulting firm the hard way, feels, and not always the clean way. He did what he had to do, and some of it still ashamed him, but once he had real power, real leverage, real resources, he used them to make sure no one could ever threaten Charlotte the same way again, feels. That was where the next wound opened, because Ethan had not only watched from a distance, he had interfered, checked apartments, quietly shaped opportunities, arranged protection without telling her, looked into men she dated, feels, tried to vet risk before it reached her. To Ethan it had been protection. To Charlotte, hearing it aloud, it felt dangerously close to control. You don't get to do that, she told him, feels. You don't get to disappear, let me grieve you. Then secretly arrange parts of my life from the shadows and call it love. Ethan did not defend himself. He did not romanticize it. He did not ask her to be grateful. He only said the truth. I know, feels. That did not fix anything, but it mattered, because this time at least, he was not trying to narrate her pain for her. He was standing in it. The next several days changed the shape of everything. Feels. Federal investigators moved on Nathan faster than expected. Ethan's team had been building a file for weeks. There were suspicious financial transfers, improper disclosures, a hidden network of shell companies, deals, pressure relationships with city officials. Enough for prosecutors to start pulling hard. Charlotte spent part of the week with an investigator named Lena Ruiz, reviewing what would and would not become part of the case. Lena was efficient, clear, feels, unsentimental. Charlotte trusted her almost immediately. Feels. She appreciated women who did not confuse softness with care. The personal betrayal mattered emotionally. The legal case had to stay factual. That meant not every ugly truth about Nathan would matter in court. Feels. It also meant the humiliation Charlotte had lived through would not all become public record. For that, she was grateful. She released one short statement, said she had ended the ceremony due to serious deception and coercive behavior. Feels. Said her family was safe, asked for privacy, then turned her phone off again. For the first time in weeks, she began understanding the difference between public drama and private damage. The scandal was for other people. The healing would be hers. Feels. That was harder. And slower, especially because Ethan was now close enough to touch and still impossible to sort. He had saved her, yes. He had also wronged her, not in the way Nathan had, but in a way that still mattered. Feels. He had loved her while bypassing her consent. Feels. Protected her while taking decisions she should have made herself. That contradiction became the center of everything. One night, after her parents had gone to bed, Charlotte confronted him in the kitchen. Not about the wedding. Not about Nathan. Feels. About the scholarship she had received years earlier, the apartment building she had ended up in, the promotion at the gallery. Piece by piece, she learned Ethan had quietly influenced more of her life than she ever knew. Not to own her, feels. Not to profit from her, not to trap her, but because guilt, love, fear, and power had become tangled inside him so tightly, he no longer knew where one ended and the next began. Charlotte got angry, not theatrical anger, clear anger, feels. The kind that names the real wound. You didn't trust me to live my own life, she said. Ethan looked like the sentence hit somewhere deep. No, he said. I trusted the world less than I should have trusted you. Feels. That answer stayed with her because it was honest enough to hurt. Feels. Charlotte began therapy the next week, not because she was weak, because she was done mistaking endurance for strength. Dr. Sunita Rao did not ask why she had ignored the red flags. Feels. She asked what had taught Charlotte that safety meant silencing herself. That question cracked something open. Over several sessions, Charlotte began to see the pattern more clearly. Nathan had offered order without respect. Feels. Ethan had offered protection without transparency. Different men, different harms, same central theft, autonomy. For the first time, Charlotte could name the actual lesson under all the drama. Love without respect will always become a cage. Feels. It may be velvet-lined, it may be well-intentioned, it may even come from someone who thinks he is protecting you, but if your choices disappear inside it, it is still a cage. Meanwhile, the legal case against Nathan widened. His firm suspended him. Feels, then distanced itself. A city official tied to his back channels resigned. Feels. Jennifer began cooperating through counsel. The little boy, Michael, remained the innocent center of a circle of adult failure. When Charlotte asked what would happen to him, Feels. Ethan told her he had already arranged a trust through a foundation so the child's education and therapy would be covered no matter how ugly the legal fallout became. Charlotte stared at him. You did that? For the kid, Ethan said. Feels. He didn't choose any of this. That was one of the first moments Charlotte felt respect for the man Ethan had become rather than just the boy she had loved. Because there is a difference between a dangerous man and a disciplined one. Feels. One uses power to dominate. The other understands exactly why power must be handled carefully. Ethan was not harmless. Charlotte was not naive enough to believe that. Feels. But she began to see that he had spent years learning what harm does when it reaches people who never asked to be in the line of fire. That did not excuse him. It complicated him. Feels. And sometimes complication is more believable than perfection. Charlotte returned to the gallery after a week. She wanted ordinary air, ordinary tasks. Ordinary light falling on paintings that had survived longer than any scandal. Feels. Her director offered leave, privacy, time. Charlotte accepted some of it and rejected the rest. Because healing is not only about retreat, sometimes it is also about returning. To work, to ritual, to yourself. On her way out that first day, feels, she spotted one of Ethan's drivers half a block away in a black car. He did not approach, did not wave, just sat where he could see the street. That night, she asked Ethan if he had put a protective tail on her. He answered yes, immediately. No excuses, feels, no spinning. That mattered still. She told him he should have asked first. He agreed, they argued. Not violently, not cruelly, but honestly. And for perhaps the first time in their history, they stayed long enough to repair instead of rupture. Feels. He said next time he would ask first. She said next time mattered more than apologies. He accepted that too. Trust did not come back as a grand emotional rush. It came back in tiny measurable units, in disclosures, in permissions. Feels. In the absence of manipulation. Her parents eventually returned home. Before they did, Thomas Bennett pulled Ethan aside for a private conversation on the lower terrace. Later, Charlotte asked what her father had said. Ethan, with a straight face, feels, answered that if he hurt Charlotte again, Mr. Bennett would use his construction equipment knowledge to arrange an extremely educational accident. Charlotte laughed. Really laughed. The sound surprised both of them. Rebecca, meanwhile, feels, had her own perspective. People can change, she told Charlotte one evening, but changed people let you verify it. Charlotte carried that sentence around for days. Verify it. Not believe blindly. Not surrender because the emotion was intense. Feels. Not confuse history with healing. Verify. Feels. That felt right. That felt like something a smart woman could live by. In the weeks that followed, Charlotte began spending time with Ethan in ways that had nothing to do with emergency. Coffee, walks, museum visits, ordinary evenings. Feels. No grand reunion, no dramatic declarations, just the slow, almost awkward work of learning who someone is when no one is actively being saved. That, Charlotte realized, was the true test. Anyone can be intense in a crisis. Feels. Anyone can become impressive when the moment demands action. The question is who they are on an ordinary Tuesday, when there is no fire and no villain and no audience. Feels. One Saturday, she found Ethan on the study floor, helping Michael build a model bridge during a supervised family logistics meeting. The little boy was giving instructions with solemn authority. Ethan, feels, who could dismantle risk assessments for multinational clients without blinking, was apparently losing an argument to cardboard engineering. Feels. Charlotte stood in the doorway and watched him speak to the child with patience so natural it hurt. Michael informed Charlotte that Ethan was not very good at following directions but was trying. Charlotte said that sounded right. Feels. After the visit, she asked Ethan why he had involved himself so much. Because children pay for adult cowardice all the time, he said. I had a chance to make sure one of them paid less. That stayed with her. Not because it was romantic, feels. Because it was humane, and real humanity is often more attractive than drama. Over time, Charlotte began speaking publicly but selectively about coercive control. Not every detail, not every wound, just the parts that might matter to other women, feels. At a small event for a support organization her mother helped fund, Charlotte said something that made the room go very still. Being protected is not the same as being respected, feels. Sometimes the most valuable thing one person can give another is not rescue, it is truth, early enough, feels, clearly enough, respectfully enough, so the other person can choose their own life with dignity. Women came up to her afterward and said me too in different ways, feels. That was when Charlotte understood the story had gained a shape bigger than her own humiliation. It had become useful, and usefulness, she had learned, was one way pain became bearable. Nathan eventually accepted a plea deal, feels. Jennifer cooperated and received lesser charges. Michael's trust was finalized. The city moved on as cities do, but Charlotte's real healing did not happen in court filings or headlines. It happened in repetition, in therapy, in work, feels. In dinners with her parents, in arguments with Ethan that ended in clarity instead of silence, in moments when she noticed her body no longer bracing quite as hard. One evening on the Riverwalk, feels. Charlotte and Ethan stopped by the railing while the city glowed around them in that gray-gold way Chicago sometimes does just before sunset gives up, feels. When you got my text, she asked, what did you think? Ethan looked out at the water. I thought I had two choices, he said. Stay away and keep pretending distance was protection. Or show up and finally risk being honest, feels. Charlotte asked if he expected her to choose him. His answer came immediately. No. I expected you to choose yourself. That changed something. Because the boy she had loved once wanted her a sanctuary. The man beside her now, maybe, feels, was finally learning how to love her as a person. Still, Charlotte did not rush. She told him she was not ready to jump back into some romantic version of their past. That history was not enough. Love was not enough, feels. The fact that he came when she called was not enough. He agreed. That mattered too. She told him if there was any future at all, it would have to be built on honesty, consent, and the freedom to leave. He said yes, not dramatically, simply, feels. That yes was smaller than the rooftop promises they had once made as teenagers, feels. But it was worth more, because this one understood consequences. They began with ordinary days. He sent calendars, asked before intervening, told the truth even when it made him look bad, feels. She practiced saying what she felt before resentment had time to harden. They fought once over an anonymous threat connected to the gallery opening because Ethan had assigned a watcher without telling her. The threat turned out to be empty, feels. The argument did not. Charlotte walked away, then came back, then said exactly why the omission mattered. Ethan did not explain his logic to death. He apologized, then asked what repair would look like. That question nearly broke her, feels. Because repair is where sincerity becomes visible. Anyone can regret. Fewer people know how to repair. Months later, Charlotte took the wedding dress out of its garment bag and laid it on her bed. For a while, she simply looked at it, not with longing, feels, not with evidence, feels. A costume from a life she had nearly mistaken for her future. Then she donated it anonymously to an organization that repurposed formal wear for scholarship fundraising. After the volunteer thanked her on the phone, Charlotte cried for 10 minutes, feels. Not because she wanted the dress, because letting go of what almost trapped you can hurt in a strange, belated way. That night, she told Ethan what she had done. He did not overinterpret it, did not make it about them, feels. Did not turn it into a metaphor he could use. He only said, that sounds like you, turning something painful into something useful. She looked at him then and thought maybe that was what had changed most, feels. He no longer tried to narrate her healing better than she could. He witnessed it. That difference was everything. Summer settled over the city, warm air, late light, open windows, feels. Charlotte and Ethan ended up on the rooftop of her building one evening with the skyline spread out around them, feels. The kind of view younger people mistake for romance by itself. Charlotte knew better now. A skyline is not intimacy. A dramatic return is not trust. Intensity is not respect. Still, the moment mattered because it was quiet, feels. Because nothing was exploding. Because no one needed rescuing. And because Ethan stood beside her without assuming the future belonged to him. Charlotte asked if he still had the bracelet charm he had given her years ago. The tiny silver bird, feels. Ethan looked surprised, then pulled a worn leather card case from his jacket and opened it. Inside was the charm. The chain was gone. The bird remained, feels. Charlotte stared at it and laughed softly because of course he would keep the smallest piece of something he could not carry whole. You carried that for 7 years? Longer, he said. Once, that would have sounded like destiny to her, feels. Now she heard it differently. Not destiny, memory, attachment. A man trying imperfectly to become worthy of something he had once lost, feels. Charlotte touched the charm lightly, then looked at him. I don't have an answer tonight, she said. About us. About anything. Ethan's expression softened. Good, he said, because I'm not asking for one. They stood there a while longer, feels. Then Charlotte said the one thing that finally clarified the whole story for her. I don't think you came back to save me. Ethan turned toward her. No? No. I think you came back because I asked for help. And there's a difference, feels. He let that sit between them, then nodded. It matters that there's a difference, he said. It did. It mattered more than any dramatic scene. Because Nathan had wanted Charlotte as an image, feels. Ethan had once tried to protect Charlotte by controlling what she knew. Both versions had failed her. The only future worth building would be one where her choices remained hers, where love and respect were not fighting each other, feels, where truth arrived early, where apology was followed by change, where being needed never overruled being honored, feels. That was the real ending, not the canceled wedding, not the public scandal, not even the man who came back. The real ending was Charlotte hearing her own voice again and never abandoning it after that. She kept going to therapy, kept working, feels. Kept speaking carefully about coercion, about instinct, about how abuse can wear expensive suits and calm voices and socially admired faces. She learned that women who survive these stories are often told to be grateful for rescue, feels. Charlotte rejected that. Gratitude was not the center. Dignity was, choice was, truth was. And when she finally let Ethan back into her life in a fuller way, it was not because he had once loved her enough to return. It was because, over time, he learned to tell the truth, accept her boundaries, and stay human in the presence of power. That was the standard now. Not chemistry, not history, not longing, respect. If there was a lesson in all of it, this was the one Charlotte chose to keep. A relationship is not valuable because it is intense, or beautiful, or dramatic, or envied. It is valuable when your humanity is safer than outside it, when your no is still yours, when your voice does not disappear to keep the peace. When the person who says they love you does not confuse love with control, that lesson would not trend as easily as betrayal. It would not sparkle as much as scandal, but it might save someone. And in the end, that was worth more than the wedding that never happened.